they need to show some biological and clinical comparison with the innovator. So they need to do some minimal study to compare with the innovator. So you may have a question. So what is the advantage for NDA? That means innovator gone through entire process, spending 10 to 20 years, spending so much of money. So what was the advantage for innovator? So there was an advantage given by the government. So they will give the exclusivity period. Like once the new drug was come to the market or from an innovator, they will give you some 20 years of 10 to 20 years of exclusivity period. That means no generic company or no other manufacturer should sell that particular product into the market. So only the innovator can market their product into the states. So that's how the innovator will get the revenue from the whatever they are invested. They will get the revenue in that stage. And also, innovator will also file some patents to the government so that no other company should infringe their patent, and they will protect. They will extend the exclusivity period and get the revenue. So once the exclusivity period will be over, generic market will come. Since they no need to do entire studies, they can immediately manufacture and show some clinical and biological relevance equivalent, and then they can market into the along with the innovator. That's how the A&A will get the revenue. The important information about the ANDA, why the government is encouraging ANDA, because to reduce the cost of the drug, because if you have only one manufacturer, only one pharmaceutical company selling the drug, it may sell at higher costs. Once the generic enter into the industry, they will sell it low cost because of competency, competition and other things. They will reduce the price, and most of the population will get the reduced price. That's why government is also encouraging generic market to come in and sell their product into their countries. Okay. Now let us come to the department. So pharmaceutical industry we can classify as APA. APA means active pharmaceutical ingredient. So that means which is a component basically acts on the disease. And also finished product. Finished product is a combination of APA along with some of the excipients, so that it will make a product and it can be consumed into the body. So pharmaceutical companies, in my opinion, I can divide into two things, in APA and finished products. Again, APA research and development line, that means synthesis. So they will do the synthesize and analyze the molecules under the production. Once the molecule was synthesized in the laboratory stage, and it will be scaled up into the production stage, and it will be manufactured in the higher scale, and it will be tested by quality control laboratory. Similarly, for finished product also, we will call it as a formulation development. That means API will be mixed with the different excipients to get a tablet or to get a capsule, to get an ointment or injection. So that will be developed by the formulation development in the development stage. That means in the lower scale. So once the formula is finalized and it is approved by the regulatory agencies, then it will go for production. That means in a larger scale. So it will be manufactured at a higher scale, and regularly it will be tested. For each batch that is manufactured will be tested by the quality control laboratory. So I highlighted the analytical part here, AR&D, analytical research and development. Quality control, that is also a testing laboratory. Similarly, quality control. Here also you can see, I did not mention here, but here also in finished product stage also we will have formulation development, analytical research and development, and also the testing laboratory in the production stage. I emphasize on the analytical part because I will talk you more about the analytical related things in the coming slides. These are the only departments in the industry? No. So there are several supporting or major departments are also there, like quality assurance, which will review the document and oversee the quality of the manufacturing or quality of the development stage. And also project management also, they will identify the different projects for a pharmaceutical company. Typically MBA and other people will perform these studies. And regulatory affairs is one of the crucial department. They will directly deal with the agencies, whatever the developed drug reports and other things, it will be submitted to regulatory affairs, and regulatory affairs in turn will submit to the agencies to get the approval. So they are the contact point with the agency and to get the approvals. And SCM, supply chain management. After manufacturing, we need to have a supply chain team in order to supply the manufactured product in a different countries or different stores. Warehouse, warehouse is generally it is required because to store the drugs, whatever the manufactured in a safe environment. IT, information technology, is not known to explain because information technology is needed for internal things and also to publish in the website and to communicate to the people. Finance, HR, administration, marketing people, engineering services. Engineering are one of the most important. They will provide the electrical services. There are big containers will be there for manufacturing. So they will maintain those containers for manufacturing. EHS, this is also one of the most important. Sorry. So EHS, environmental health and safety. This department will ensure people who are working in the company premises are safe, and there is no hazard chemicals are handled without proper protection. They will ensure, and several other departments will be also be there as a supporting thing. So this is basic landscape of the departments. So quickly going to the analyst. So I am stepping into analyst stage. Since I did my MSc analytical chemistry, I started my career as an analyst. So I have experienced some of the different stages of analytical field. So the basic stage, what I experienced, any analyst, if you are entered into the laboratory, you need to get proper training. So company will ensure you will get all the required trainings before you actually perform the analysis. You must be know the analytical technique principles. Until unless you know the principles, it is not advised to handle the instruments because you will not get anything. You just do the work, but you will not get the what actually the instrument to do until you know the principles. So this basically you will get in the education stage. Handling of instrument, again, handling of instruments is very important because whatever you learn in the colleges, you will not get chance to handle the instruments. But when you come to industry, the entire scenario will different. You will see a different scenario. So you need to have experience to get experience on handling how to handle instrument properly. If you handle instrument improperly, they will work improperly, and you will get uh, damage of these instruments. Okay, standard operating procedures. So when you enter into the laboratory as a trainee or you are appointed as a new analyst, you will be giving a standard operating procedures. That means you have to read and understand carefully what are the different procedures you have to follow. Handling of chemicals. Again, as I mentioned, in the colleges, you might not get chance to handle many chemicals. But when you come to industry, you have to handle the chemicals. So you need to read the safety data sheets, which will come with the material. So what is the category of the material? Whether it's a harmful hazard, a health hazard, or it will have some implication on eyes, nose, anything. They will give the entire information about the chemicals. So you have to need to wear proper uh, what you call safety precautions. You need to wear apron, you need to wear goggles, you need to wear masks in order to not expose from the vapors or chemicals smells. And then preparation of solutions. So a senior analyst will train you how to prepare the samples. Anyhow, you will get experience in your college. Again, preparation of solutions is the most important part. And patience. So as an analyst, you need to have a patience, definitely. Most of the times, what will happen? The mistakes will happen from analyst side because of in a hurry situation. So if you do the things in a hurry manner, definitely instrument will not go, will not do any error. It will give you the proper result. So whatever error you make, instrument will find out, and you will need to repeat the experiments, and it will have a lot of investigation, other things. So I recommend as an analyst, you need to have a lot of patience whenever you are doing an experiment. Okay, let us quickly go to the next stage. Once you learn all the basic things, you will go to the next stage like method development, how the methods will be developed. For example, HPLC I will talk about today, and method validations. So validation uh, will ensure that method is properly working. There are no issues with the method, and method can be used anywhere. Anywhere means analytical research development or quality control. That means in the production site. Stability studies, again, it is mandatory for a manufacturer to determine the stability studies, stability of the drug product. If you go to the market, if you see any drug, any strip, any medicinal strip, you can see the expiry date. So that means the drug is stable up to that particular period. After that, it will get deteriorated. It will not be advised to consume. That means, so that stability studies will be performed at manufacturing lab, the pharmaceutical company, and they will provide the shelf life. How many days it can be, how many years it can be stable. Protocols, again, protocols are validation protocols, stability protocols, development protocols. So you will experience these in the next stage. Documental review. Uh, you will be performing analysis, and somebody will compulsory need to review those documents, whether you prepared properly or not, you performed properly or not. Everything you prepare, it will be documented, and that document should be reviewed and approved by the departments. Corrective action and preventive action. If you do any mistake, it will not leave at that stage, but it will go for a thorough investigation. Investigation means, as I mentioned, quality assurance department will do an investigation why this issue happened. For example, if you prepare a solution wrongly, and the investigation will start why you prepared wrongly, what is the reason, any instrument issue or any sample issue. So they will do the investigation and they will document. And good manufacturing practice and good laboratory practices you must need to follow when you are into the industries. Okay, coming to the certificate of analysis. So this is a typical COA for API and drug product. You need to, this is an example, not a clearly or exact from the industry. This is an example that I prepared just to show, give you a flavor of certificate analysis, how it looks like. It will have a company logo as mentioned here. It will have a molecular name. It should have a certificate number, product code, product name, date of manufacture, when it is manufactured, when it is expired, when it will be expired based on stability studies, and what is the batch number, who is the supplier. All those information will be need to be captured in certificate analysis, and then followed by different tests. So you need to give in the certificate what are the different tests were performed for this drug product. These are some examples I just shown you: description, identification, assay, related substances, water content, pH, any pH is there, particle size, what is the particle size of that API, and the residual solvents. So in the chemical synthesis, you can see there are a lot of organic solvents will be used in the chemical synthesis. So it is not expected to have in the final drug product, this solvent should not be present. So there is a limit test. This test will be performed by gas chromatography, and those limits should be provided in the COA. It should not more than 100 people or 5,000 people. This will be determined again by ICH quality guidelines and also FDA regulatory guidelines or European guidelines. So based on those guidelines, these different tests will be identified. So what we are trying to provide here for a particular drug, we are trying to provide the safety, effective, the quality of the product, how the product is manufactured and how it is tested for different parameters. Whether it is, if it is within the limit, that means the product is quality enough for consuming. So these are some important information. Really, description generally will be done by visual inspection. Identification is most important parameter in order to identify whether you manufactured the same drug or not. I would say, for example, I am manufacturing a paracetamol, very well-known molecule. So somebody is manufacturing for me, and it came to me for further processing. So what I need to do, I need to identify whether it is really a paracetamol or any other thing. So what I will do, I will purchase an USP reference standard or European reference standard. So these reference standards are available in the market, which are supplied by the pharmacopoeias. So those reference standards will be taken, and it will be compared against whatever material I received, whether it is same or not. Sometimes what will happen, if you do not identify or do this test, if by mistake some person did the wrong labeling and they send some other product, and if you did not identify that, then it will have a big mess. Like as I mentioned previously, in diethylene glycol case, the first scenario for cold syrup, if it has been identified by the analyst or the company with the diethylene glycol standard, if it is present or not, then it would have saved the children's life. So any mistake can happen anywhere. We must ensure all the tests properly done for any compound. So identification using the standard materials which are available in the market, it will be compared. Then assay. So you have to identify the assay. That means whether how much content present in the particular thing, the particular bulk material. For example, I received a drum with saying a paracetamol 1 kg drum. So when I receive a material, I need to test using HPLC or titration or any other technique how much content is present. Again, it is by using a standard. I will again compare with the standard, and I will determine the assay. And impurities. Impurity is the most very important topic, because it is expected not to have any impurities, and we must test using HPLC chromatography. Most popular technique is the HPLC chromatography. We need to test the impurity profile. What are the different impurities are there in the drug? You can see here impurity A. This is an example: impurity A, impurity B, any other impurity, total impurities. So in order to say the material is quality enough, and we must need to test for these impurities. Then water content. Again, water content. It is not expected to have a more water content or suitable. There should be a suitable water content for related to a drug. It depends upon the different drugs. Some drugs will have, for example, some drug molecules will have hydrate itself in the molecule. So that molecule will have a specific water content. If the molecule is not having in its structure, the water content in its structure, then there should be a limit. We should control that water content. And then pH, some other test, particle size and residual solid. This is a typical API COA. And what will be in the drug product COA? Similar information will be there. Additionally, you can see dissolution test, uniformity of dosage unit tests. So in coming slides, I will explain. Okay, let us come to the chromatography basic information. I know you might have studied in your books and other things. I just show you how the chromatography originated. So the first experiment was did by Dr. Michael Sweat experiment. So what he did, he extracted the plant ingredients into solvent, and he prepared a column. You can see here a column with prepared with some chalk powder. He filled with a chalk powder and pour the solvent. Initially, you can see only green color. When it is going from top to bottom, because of the gravitational force, the liquid will come from top to bottom. He observed different colors getting separated. So because of this, the chromatography name was came. In Greek, chroma means color, graphy means writing. So the colors were separated as a graph, different graphs. So he named it as a chromatography. That is the basic definition arrived for a chromatography. Then a lot of developments are happened in chromatography. Lot of developments. The starting one was the thin layer chromatography. Thin layer chromatography still is a popular technique. Still, industry is using in order to identify the impurities. So what the thin layer chromatography will do? There will be a glass chamber. In that, you will be pouring some organic solvent. So organic solvents will tend to get absorbed by the silica gel, and it will move from bottom to top. That means against the gravity because of affinity towards the silica gel. So the organic solvents will be poured in the top bottom, in the bottom of the vessel, and a silica gel plate will be introduced into the vessel. And before that, they will introduce the sample in a volumes, in a few volumes, few microliters. You can see here, they will introduce blank, standard, and samples or something like that. And after some period of time, the solvent will move along with the bottom to top of the silica gel plate. And during this movement, the spots which were initially we have introduced the sample spots will also move along with the solvent. And thereby, you can see separation of different components. Initially, you can see there are you don't recognize whether it contains three different molecules or not. After running the chromatography, you can say that the first spot is having three different molecules, second and third are having three different molecules. And based on the similar retardation factor, that means similar distance movement by a spot can be considered as a similar molecule. For example, the blue spot is moved here. Again, similar blue spot observed at the same distance from the bottom. That means this one and this blue spot are same molecules. This is a preliminary identification test. We can identify whether the component is having different molecules and the comparison with the standards. Then the advancement is the column chromatography. So as Michael Sweat did the experiment by running the solvent extract, you can see here solid phase extraction, HPLC, UPLC, flash chromatography. So the sample, the stationary, we will call it as a stationary phase. The solid material will be introduced into a, you can see a conical type of thing, cylindrical type of burette here. They will introduce the solid material into the cylindrical tube, and they will load the samples. You can see here sample is only only black color, and then they will continuously pour the eluting solvent. That means water or any other solvent will be poured continuously into the tube. So what will happen? So after different stages, the colors will get separated, and you can collect the fractions differently. Initially, it is a combination of yellow, red, and blue sample here. After the separation, you can separate using the column. You can separate the different molecules. Also, you can collect the fractions when it is during the elution time. For example, you can see yellow here. Until yellow comes, you can collect a fraction. Then after yellow, red will come. You can collect a red fraction, the molecule, and the third one is a blue fraction. So you can separate different molecules and you can extract those. Okay, comes to the HPLC. Ravikant, Prakash, please let me know when because there are so many other slides I can quickly run through. So I need to stop by 12:30, right?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I will quickly provide you some information about the HPLC columns. So HPLC, this is a typical diagram of the HPLC. You have a solvent mobile phase reservoir, we will call it as, and we need to have a pump because the solvent cannot come with the gravitational force here, because if you expect to run the solvent through gravitational force, that means from top to bottom, it needs a lot of time to get the separation and to collect the fraction. But if you have a pump to pressure, to make a pressure on the solvent and pass through the column, it will take much lesser time compared to the gravitational force. So in order to save the time, we will have a pump, and then HPLC column. This is where the separation will happen. This is similar to what you've seen in the column chromatography in a cylindrical tube. So now the modern scenario, we will have a what you call stainless steel type of columns, and inside the stainless steel cylindrical column, the stationary phase will be packed, and it will be used for the separation of the components. So we will have a pump in order to pump the solvent into the column, and then we need to have an injector, right? Because my aim is to separate three components from a sample. So I need to inject into the column. So there will be a system called injector auto sampler in HPLC. In that you have to inject so that it will goes to the column. Earlier it was used to do by manual, but nowadays it is auto. Instrument will do the injection itself. So you have to prepare the sample vial, kept it in a 2 ml glass vial, and keep in the instrument. The auto sampler, that means instrument itself will take that vial and take required volume, and it will inject into the column. After that column, once the separation will happen, it will enter to the detector. Again, after the separation, you need to detect what are the different components are coming out of the column. So that was the detector part. And then data acquisition system. So once you collect the data, it will be recorded as a graph. So once the graph is there, you can do different type of calculations. That way I will show you in the next slides. Okay, so I will show you the what happens inside the column. I have injected the black sample in the auto sampler. So the instrument itself taken the sample and it is injected into the column. So I injected a black sample and I am pumping the solvent using a pump. So using some pressure, I am pumping the solvent into the column. So that means the solvent is moving from column in starting to end stage. When the solvent is flowing into the column, the black component will also try to move from column initial to column end stage. During this stage, you will see separation of those different components. You can see blue is a one component, red is a one component, and yellow is one component, and it will come out of the column. So you can say the first component is yellow is coming out of the column. Secondly, red is coming. Third one is blue is coming out of the column. Okay, now let us see. We now see different colors when it is run into chromatography. In the column chromatography, we can visualize what are the different colors are coming. But if you see most of the organic molecules, it will not be in a colored nature. You cannot see in the naked eye. So there is an instrument called UV lamp. When you subject a UV lamp into sample will absorb some of the radiation from UV, and then it will give the peak. We can convert that absorbance into a peak using the data acquisition system. So I will show you. This is a typical UV detector. So the light radiation, This is not the light that we are seeing daily in the house. That is a visible light. The range of visible light is from 400 to 800 nanometer. We can see the light, but UV light we cannot see with the naked eye. There is a special filament will be there to produce 200 to 400 nanometer radiation, so that organic molecules, that is pharmaceutical molecules, most of the molecules will absorb in this range 200 to 400. So that light will be passed through a cell where the eluent is coming out. You can see here the end stage. Here the detector will be placed. The radiation will comes like this. The radiation will fall onto the detector. This is a glass window. Through the glass window, sample is coming out of the column and it is entered into the glass window, and light will fall into that. You can see once the light fall into the sample, it will absorb some light. That absorbance will be converted into a peak shape. So you can see different peaks in the chromatogram. That's how you will observe the peaks. And this is one of the detector, mass detector or mass analyzer. This is used for the determination of elemental mass of the particular component. Because of the time, I will skip this at this stage. So then you can quantify again. As I mentioned, you will get some peaks. Compare with the similar chromatographic run with that of standard, and compare the area under the peak. So the retention time, once it is coming out of the column, we will monitor with respect to two aspects. One is retention time and another one is absorbance. Retention time indicates how much time the component is spent in the column. For example, 2.85 minutes. That means this component spends around 2.85 minutes in the particular chromatographic conditions. So after 2.85 minutes, it is comes out of the column. Similarly, if you see here going back, as an example, I would say this will spend 2 minutes of time. This may spend 5 minutes. This may spend 10 minutes of time, because as it is eluting fast, it may take lesser time. It may take some more time. This may take some more time. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes. This is how the retention time will be defined. Okay. So the retention time is a characteristic for identity match. You can inject your standard and your sample. So your standard and the sample should have a similar retention time. That means your sample is same as that of your standard. It is not a different sample. So that's how we can identify with the retention time. Another one is, I mentioned, area. So area under the curve is mostly used for the calculation of how much component is present. For example, I injected a standard at a particular concentration. I got an area of 100. I injected a sample. I got an area of 100. That means my standard is 100%. My sample is 100% SA. Strength is 100%. If I got a 50 area, so my sample is having only 50% of the particular component. So what happens to another 50%? There is a contamination, there are impurities, or it is not properly manufactured. So those type of quality tests will be determined using this absorbance and retention time, area and retention time. Okay. So as I mentioned previously, why different peaks are eluting at different time? Because of their retention behaviors. So one is more retained because why it is more retained is because it is having some interactions with the stationary phase. So now you see two different phases. One is stationary phase and another one is mobile phase. Stationary phase is filled in the column, which will not move. That's why it is called as a stationary phase. Another one is mobile phase. That means a solvent that is continuously flowing through the column. That is mobile phase. So due to the different interactions of the particular component with the stationary phase and mobile phase, it will get retained. One is, if one molecule is having more interactions with the stationary phase, it will retain more. It will not elute fast. Similarly, if one is having less interactions, it will come out of the column first. I will show you. Here I can explain you. The blue one is having less interactions with the stationary phase. That means inside the column material. That is the reason it moved very fastly from column initial to column end. So it is moved very fastly. Then followed by red. Red molecule is having some interactions still. So that's why it is moved slowly. And yellow is having still a stronger interactions with the stationary phase. That's the reason it is not getting eluted. That's why you have seen different interactions and different retention times. Initially you injected black sample and finally you end up with 3 different components based on their interactions. Okay, so again I will not touch on this because of the time. Okay, so the Van Demeter equation, yeah, Van Demeter equation is nothing but talks about the height equivalent of theoretical plates. So theoretical plates, the name itself is saying you have to imagine as a plate. Plate means here you can see yellow, a band of yellow, band for red, and band for blue. And you can also observe different width of these bands. Yellow is having less width, red is having slightly higher width, and blue is having still higher width. This width or this height is known as height equivalent of theoretical plates. So Van Demeter explained a phenomena based on this different plates height. What happens when you eluted this? If your width is high, and you will get I don't know how I can annotate. Let me show options. 10. Okay, so you can see here I just making some based on this width you will get a broader peak. This is for an example I am saying, and this is having compared to less width, and you will get somewhat some of the sharper peak. And since it is still having a very less width, and you will get very sharp peak. You can identify the difference. So which is a better peak shape? The first one is having a better peak shape. So better peak shape is very important in order to quantify properly and identify the retention time. So because of different widths, when it is passing through the column, you will experience a different width and you will get a different peak shapes. The higher bandwidth is having a broader peak shape, and the lower bandwidth is having a very good shape. So this phenomenon is explained by Van Demeter, that is height equivalent of theoretical plates is basically on the 3 factors. This is most very important underlying principle of the chromatography. It should be thoroughly and carefully understand and properly after this training. So it will depend on the 3 factors A, B, and C. And U is the velocity. How much velocity of the mobile phase you are pumping into the column. So in order to control these parameters A, B, and C, we have to identify the proper velocity. How much flow I need to give. How much flow I have to use for HPLC to get a very good peak shapes. So A, B, and C, these are the terms. And the ground rule is the H value should be minimum. That means H is nothing but the width. Width should be minimum so that you will get the good peak shape. So in order to get the H value minimum, that means width you have to get minimum. You need to have A value will be less, B value should be less, C value will be less. And I will explain you the slides. What is A1, what is B, and what is C. Okay, A is called eddy diffusion. This is most important parameter one should consider when developing chromatography. So eddy diffusion, what will happen? This is A. The term A is identified as eddy diffusion. You can hear the spherical things is the stationary phase. So the stationary phase will be packed in the column with irregular order or different orders. You cannot ideally make exactly in the same path when you are manufacturing a stationary phase. So you will have different alignment of the particles in the stationary phase. Because of this, when you injected your sample into the column, the sample may choose a different path. For example, one is selected a lesser path, another one gone through a higher path, it is going to a different path, and another portion of the sample is taking a different path. So if you see green, green is taking a lesser path, that means it will elute fastly. So within the same peak, earlier you have seen three different peaks are eluting at a different rate. Within the peak, within the one peak, how it is behaving. Within the one peak, one portion will come fast, another portion may come little slow, another portion may come further slow. So that's how you will get a peak shape. This is one of the phenomena to explain why peak shape is coming. So the portion of the component which is coming earlier will be coming here, and then followed by the medium path, and then coming as a later path. That means a high distance traveled path. Overall, this is one component, and you will get the peak shape like this. So eddy diffusion is mostly to do with the stationary phase. How proper your stationary phase depends on the eddy diffusion. If the stationary phase, the particles in the stationary phase are arranged properly, the eddy diffusion will be less, and you will get a very good peak shape. The arrangement of particles is different, and you will experience obviously you will experience a different path for the component, and you will get a broader peak shape. Okay, next coming to the longitudinal diffusion. So longitudinal diffusion is nothing but spreading of the molecule in the liquid. You can see here in the starting, a ink drop was added into the water. You can see it was getting dispersed, and the dispersion is getting increased, and finally it is most dispersed rapidly. So here it was concentrated in the first diagram, and in the second diagram it was increased, and in the third diagram it is further increased. You can imagine, or you can compare with the chromatogram or peak shape. So if you have a longitudinal diffusion, if you have an improper flow rate, for example, you are using a slow flow rate. Typically, we use 1 ml flow rate. If you use a 0.1 ml flow rate, what will happen? Mobile phase will slowly pass it through the column. Because of slowly passing through the column, your injected sample, the components, will get diffused into the liquid mobile phase. So you will get a distorted or broad peak shape if your flow rate is small. So you need to ensure the proper flow rate in order to avoid the longitudinal diffusion of the molecule. And third important parameter, I will not read the information here, just I will give you the mass transfer information. This is also one of the parameters that causes peak shape, broader peak shape or improper peak shape. So what happens? Two types of mass transfer can happen. One is mobile phase mass transfer. So what happens, if you see in the column, the flow of mobile phase will be slow in the edges of the column. If you imagine inside the column, if you see inside the column, when mobile phase is flowing, in the what you call inside the column surrounding you, the flow will be slightly less, and in the middle portion the flow will be very high. So sometimes molecule may experience a different flow again within the mobile phase itself. It may cause again distortion in the peak shape or broadening in the peak shape. Again in the stationary phase, you can see, for example, if you go back to the stationary phase, again you can see the voids from top to bottom. the molecule may disperse again within the stationary frame from top to bottom. So it will also cause the diffusion. That is called mass transfer. So with all these three factors, you will get increase in the peak broadening, band broadening. In order to reduce, again I have shown here eddy diffusion, how it is impacting the peak shape. If the mobile phase is too slow, the longitudinal diffusion, that is B parameter, will be very high. The solvent or if your mobile phase flow is very fast, you will have experience on mass transfer. So all these parameters will have impact. But the expectation is A, B and C terms should be less as possible to get a proper peak shape. So all these parameters will be impacted by a flow rate. So you can see here the height should be less. Height means the width should be very, very less. In order to get the less width and to control A, B, C and C terms, you have to identify an optimal velocity of the mobile phase. So you can see here, this is where if you select the flow rate in this region, you will get an optimal peak shape. Like I would not say very sharp peak, but best possible peak shape can be obtained using the optimal uh, flow rates. This is how Van Demeter explained the phenomena of chromatographic behavior. Different peak shapes, different height equivalent theoretical plates. Okay, I really, what you say, I really require all the students to go back and again read the Van Demeter equation and understand thoroughly these principles so that you will get master into the chromatographic techniques. This is most important parameter. Okay, how much time I have left? Okay, I have left only few minutes, so I will not read out, give the information about this. Again, the water content, as I mentioned, water content will be determined for all the samples based on the Karl-Fischer titration. Karl-Fischer titration basically is a chemical reaction. So if a molecule is having a water and it will be reacted with iodine, I2, and I2 will get reduced and it will become iodide, and water molecule will be consumed by using this. So Karl-Fischer instrument will have a platinum electrodes which will identify how much iodine is consumed. Thereby the water is determined. So for example, if my sample is having 1% water content, so based on the iodine consumption, the potential value will be determined, and it will be calculated how much, based on the potential, how much water could be present will be calculated. And nowadays sophisticated instruments were there, you will get direct result. And this is the reagent which is currently being used in the industry. And also coulometer, again coulometer is also used for water determination. In the Karl-Fischer titration, you will see iodine reagent will be added externally from a reagent, but in coulometry, iodine will be generated inside the electrode using the electric potential. By applying electrical potential, the iodine will be generated inside the vessel, and the generated iodine will be reacted with water. Thereby, the water content will be estimated. This is a coulometric technique. And in coulometry also, some samples, what will happen, they will not soluble. The requirement, again, if you go back to the chemical reaction, the requirement is molecule should get soluble in the solvent, that is Karl-Fischer methanol or any other reagent. If it is not getting soluble, how to determine the water? So there are molecules which are not soluble in methanol or suitable Karl-Fischer reagent. There are techniques are available. Those are called oven techniques. Oven technique means you will heat the sample. For example, in a glass vial, I don't know it will be visible in your screen, but if the sample will be added into a glass vial and it will be sealed using a rubber septa, and it is heated at a particular temperature. So the water vapor will be get released from the molecule into the vial, and that water vapor will be carried using a nitrogen into the titration vessel again. So that water vapor again will be determined using a chemical reaction by Carl Fisher, and the water content will be estimated. So those techniques are also available. And dissolution is also one of the important. This is an in vitro test. In vitro test means biological relevance can be compared using in vivo studies like animal studies or culture studies. In vitro studies are the studies which can be done using laboratory equipment and laboratory reagents. This was developed by USP 1950. This is a predictive technique. For example, as I mentioned in earlier previous slides in the starting, ANDA, generic market, what they will do, they want, they are expected to show similar behavior as that of innovator drug. So what they will do, they will do the dissolution test. For example, they will take a reference drug in one dissolution. They will use their product, their developed product in another dissolution apparatus, and they will do similar study, and they will compare the profile of innovator drug and their manufacturer, their developed drug. They will compare the profiles. If it is meeting the criteria in vitro studies, then regulatory agency will accept for the further studies, further clinical studies. So most industries, tablet, drug product industries will do this in the dissolution apparatus. Again, this dissolution development is based on the biopharmaceutical classification system. I don't know whether it will come in your study. So BCS is classified into 4 categories. Any drug will be falls under these 4 categories. The first category, high solubility, high permeability. Second is low soluble, high permeable. Third is high soluble and low permeable. Fourth is low soluble and low permeable. How the solubility is determined? The maximum dose of the drug. If it is getting soluble in 250 ml, then that is considered a high soluble drug. So 1 and 3 are high soluble drug. So typically they will not have any issues in the clinical studies or bioavailability of these drugs because of their high solubility nature. Second and fourth are having some issues because of the low solubility drug, and it is not getting soluble. So more studies has to be done when the drug is class 2 or class 4. And USP type 1 is a basket type of apparatus. So the tablet or capsule will be introduced into a basket. You can see here, there will be a stainless steel rod into which a basket, different types of baskets were used in the industry, and tablet or capsule is introduced. So similar vessel will be used for innovator drug, and they will use the RPM and time point in order to compare the profiles. They will use the media like 0.1 normal HCl or pH 4.5 buffer or 6.8 buffer. Different buffers were used in order to compare with the innovator drugs. And another one is paddle, USP apparatus 2, that is paddle. See here you can see drug is getting released when the paddle is stirring. It is USP apparatus. A similar experiment will be performed in comparison with the innovator tablet, and the samples will be collected and tested and see how much it is released. Okay. Then reciprocity, this is another type of instrument. Gas chromatography. Earlier you seen liquid was used as a mobile phase. In gas chromatography, everything is same, but gas will be used as a mobile phase. Instead of a solvent, gas will be used for the separation of the components. There will be slightly different instrument parameters in the gas chromatography. Because of time, I may not explain these things. And these are the detectors, different detectors used in the gas chromatography. One thing I will explain you here, for gas chromatography, we will use to determine the solvents. So the main application is to determine the solvents, because solvents will be get evaporized And once it got into the evaporation stage, the gas mobile phase. The mobile phase typically uses nitrogen, helium, and some other argon gases. That gases will be used as the mobile phase. Those gases continuously will pass through the column. Once I am analyzing a solvent, the solvents will get evaporated, and that evaporated solvent will mix with the mobile phase. That means carrier gas, and then it will pass to the detector. So that's how the samples will be, the solvents will be analyzed in the gas chromatography. So the main requirement for a gas chromatography is that our sample must be thermally volatile. It should be volatile in nature. You can see injector here. Once the solvents, mixture of solvents injected here there will be a heated instrument will be there. All the injected liquid will be evaporated because of heating, and then that heated vapors will be carried with the carrier gas, and it will be detected here. And different detectors are used. Flame ionization detector, thermal conductivity detector are there. So flame ionization detector, what it will do, carrier gas will continuously flows through the column, and our residual solvents also will evaporate and will comes along with the carrier gas, and it will comes to the flame. Once it is comes to the flame, the molecule will be destroyed. For example, I am having a ethanol CH3CH2OH. Once it enters into the flame, it will get as a CH2 plus ions. So CH2 plus ions will comes to the detector, cathode and anode, and since it's a CH2 plus ion, it will bombard with the anode, and current will be generated. That current will be converted into a peak shape. That is how this detector will detect the residual solvent. The important requirement for this detector is the solvent should have at least one CH2 in its structure. So only CH2 plus ions will be detected using this detector. But for thermal conductivity detector, it's not a requirement. Any molecule will be, any residual solvent can be detected using this thermal conductivity detector. And finally, these are the ICH quality guidelines. ICH means International Conference on Harmonization of Drugs. So for any drug, it is need to be, it should be followed at least these guidelines, all these guidelines, in order to apply for regulatory agencies. There are different guidelines, Q1 to Q14, are with the different topics, say talking about different topics. You can see, as I mentioned today, about the impurities. What are the different type of impurities are allowed? What are the different limits allowed for a drug product to be manufactured or to be sold into the market? So specification part, there are some topics about biotechnology products if you are interested, topic about good manufacturing products practices, quality risk management, and also analytical procedure development. These are freely available resource in ICH quality guideline. If you go through these topics, you will get more information. If you have, for example, in your studies, in your textbooks, if you have, for example, pharmaceutical development, I recommend you also go through Q8 what it says. This is a regulatory requirement. So this will give you more practical requirements of drug product. With this, I will end my talk today. Sorry for taking additional time. I hope you will get the. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the panelists or the management of Dhanvantari College, so that I can respond to them, and thereby you can get. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your patience. I really wish you will get some insights on the pharmaceutical things. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
Dr. Yeah.
Welcome, sir.
Hello, Prasad Garu.
Please be.
Yes, tell me.
Yeah, are you there? We would like to speak a few words about you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for accepting our invitation from Dharmantri Institution and management,
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah.
It is a really enlightening speech to our students. We know you are working
Yeah.
in very reputed organization at top level. In spite of this, to our surprise, you touched very basics as well.
Yeah.
The discussion on band emitter equation is excellent. We have just evoked all basics that we have studied in BPharmacy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
need people like you in the future, really.
Yeah.
When I was searching for the people for the webinar, unexpectedly I come across your name by is suggested by Mr. Venkatesh, as you know.
Yeah.
It is like getting a job part for me.
Yeah.
Because I understand the value of this kind of expertise. We don't easily get this kind of access to the student, and especially we have to thank this corona. It is given opportunity to bring such kind of people, such kind of expertise to our students to their door.
Yeah.
Okay, with this I just close, and we are requesting you to extend your help for the future sessions as well, if possible.
Definitely. I'm really glad that college invited me, and I also thank you, Dr. Ravikant, and also my friend Venkatesh, through which I came to know that I can participate and I can share my experience with this, especially the students, because the practical things are completely different than the what we study in the college. So I just would like to give the insights.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your invite.
Yeah, you are always welcome, Prasad Garu. Okay, thank you once
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
We will meet once again in the future.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, students. Bye.
Bye.
Take
They are
care.
muted, everybody. Everybody muted.
Yeah, no problem. I understand. No.
Yeah. Okay. Prasad Garu. Bye.
Thank you.
I'll call you
Bye.
personally.
Take care.
Take care. Bye. Prakash?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can we close?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Thank you.